Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres. Okay. Whew. Well, I thought I had my usual slow-release organic fertilizer by the back door of the house, the kitchen. I don't have a proper garden shed, so that means everything has to be stored either in a corner of the kitchen or out in the utility building or the greenhouse. So I apparently got tired of some of the bigger, lumpier stuff in the kitchen, so the only thing that was there was blood meal and bone meal, both of which are valuable, but in this case I wanted a slow release that I've used before. So I had to go out to the utility shed, and this is what I used. Let me get you a good shot of this. Hoss Tools organic fertilizer. It is a pelleted chicken manure. It is a mild fertilizer, 543, and it was slow release. So I have this one, and I have a full-size container of it. So I was kind of concerned when I first saw this. But this says 1.5 cups per 10 square feet. So I just usually just give it some top dressing. I'm gonna need to reconnect some of this stuff later, but it doesn't matter because I'm not using the irrigation right now. So I'm just going to sprinkle into all the corners and everywhere else. There's no leaves here that I would have to be careful of if I was putting this on. This is a pretty mild fertilizer anyway, but if I were putting this on, say, tomato plants or something, I would be putting it into the little drainage basin around the base of the plant. If I were putting it on any of my pots, I would be sprinkling it around on the dirt. And I do use this in the greenhouse. I will often put this in addition to a quick fertilizer like a 20-20-20 that is water soluble. And you put it, if you put the 20-20-20 in a mild formula, then you don't have to worry about it burning anything. But it gives the plant instant access to good nutrition. I get the hiccups now. The good nutrition, and gives it something to work with immediately rather than having to wait for something. If I'm preparing a bed and I want to have fertilizer there ready, say I'm planting bush beans, for instance, I would get my bed completely set and put this down, maybe even put a little bit of the compost on top of it about 2 weeks before, at least a week, but preferably 2 weeks before I am planting the beans, and I would water. Now when I plant and I'm not saying flood the place, I'm saying just keep the bed moist. Now when I go to actually plant my beans in there, the fertilizer is there ready to go so that the plant doesn't have to get stunted. One of the problems with stunting plants is that once they're stunted, they're never going to be as healthy as if they had been healthy from square one. You may still get a decent crop out of them, but one of the reasons I always try and prep this bed early in the spring, preferably before they sprout at all, which in this case I have managed to do. I try and do it in February or March because I want the fertilizer to be there when the plant needs it. And now I'm simply going to go get my watering can, and I still have a nice quantity in here. This will go by the back door of the house, now in the kitchen. with a clamp on it. And I will go ahead and get my watering can and water this. I don't need to give it 1,000,000 pounds of water, but I just need to help it sort of start getting going. Okay, I have 2 watering cans. The one in my right hand is a new one that Henry got me for Christmas 2 years ago. And the one in my left hand, which I'm using first, leaks. It's old and it's got a leak in the bottom. And that's why I'm using it first, is because the water is going to drain out of that one all by itself. So I want to go ahead and use that so that I'm not wasting the water. This water came from a small cattle tank that is under the edge of my studio roof and collects water off that. And because we've had precipitation in the last month or so, it's pretty full. I have started using it for watering some of the perennials that are just sort of starting up. And yeah, I just want to get a little moisture in here. I don't feel like I need to soak the thing, but yeah, I want to make sure that every day, once it's not raining, you start losing moisture out of your beds. And if you're not replacing it or keeping it in somehow, you're losing it. And what I want to do here is I want to get the fertilizer to start to melt. I want to keep the moisture in the bed. Now, this has got a little compost on top, so that will help to maintain the moisture content of the bed. But by putting down, I will probably put down water, it depends on the weather, but at least once a week now until I see the plants starting to sprout asparagus. When I see them starting to sprout asparagus up, then depending on the weather, I may increase the frequency of watering to twice a week. And if I feel like we're having extra warm days or extra windy days, which suck the water right out of the soil here, then I will up that quantity. Or I might not up the frequency that I water, I might increase the amount. So instead of putting down just 2 watering cans of water, I might put 4. So 2 trips over to the cattle tank. And there we are. We are ready for spring. Whew. So now I need to clean up the asparagus ferns that are still sitting around over here. And I need to get the compost over here somewhere so that I can find it. I have some rebuilding to do, but I'm going to need to go down to Home Depot or someplace and pick up some more compost. And this was the critical one. This was the most critical thing on the list. The next critical projects are the raspberries and the blackberries. The 2 blackberry beds need to be trimmed. And I need to check over the raspberries, and you also need to weed them. And then sometime fairly soon, I need to transplant the raspberries that are in pots over there because I didn't have a place to put them last year. So they're going to go in bed number 10, which is one of my raised beds over here. It has my brain just totally fell out. I can't think of the name of the plant. Oh, Sweet Williams. It has Sweet Williams in the end of it, which are a type of perennial flower. But the rest of the bed I'm going to put into raspberries. And that will be easy to maintain because it's on the irrigation system. So that could just be run as irrigation the same way as the ones that are over here for the raspberries and blackberries. But I have been weeding. I have been pulling out the white horehound because every once in a while the dog will show up covered with burrs again, and I'm like, okay, where's the plant? And I'll come out here and sneak around, and there'll be one stupid plant that's managed to produce a whole stack of burrs. So I've been watching for that. I know where there's a couple more that I need to get out before he gets into those. But this was the critical factor. So figure out what your critical factor is. What is it that you need to do most? Are you having trouble, if you're growing in pots, are you having trouble with keeping the weeds from growing up around your pots? Because the pots do drain out either into saucers or onto the ground. And, you know, so consider putting down some sort of a professional grade ground cover, or put down flagstone or something, so that you're not having to deal with, you know, the weeds. Figure out what your critical things are and get started, because right now it's in between storms. I can still see snow up on the mountain in Williams, and we're supposed to have another storm, I want to say a week. I know it's in the 10-day forecast somewhere, so I think it's about a week from now. Could be sooner. They have not been great about forecasting what it's going to be lately. So it could be rain, it could be snow. I have no idea. We do need the rain. The more rain we get, the more moisture content we have in the soil to start with. That means we have to pay for less moisture content to put into the soil. That's a good thing. But, you know, now's the time to figure out what you need to do. Make your list. Make your priority list. And don't be afraid to change your priority list if you have to, because something comes up. I had planned to have this done 2 weeks ago, and we have spent our lives on the highway to various doctor appointments and stuff the last 2 weeks. So, in order to catch up, it's a Sunday. I try and take a little time off on Sunday, but just goof off a little. I always do something, but this was a project that was important enough that, yeah, I haven't even had lunch yet, and I've got a project done, so awesome. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because obviously we are going to be doing tons of stuff. If you have questions specifically about how beds are built, what fertilizer we use, how we apply it, any of the other questions that come up when you're a newbie, or not a newbie, but maybe you're trying a new plant, don't hesitate to ask. One or the other of us will answer the questions. Sometimes Henry says, oh, you need to answer that question. And I'll go, oh, sorry, okay. Because he's been monitoring lately, because I've been spending more time in the studio lately. So, anyway, until next time, bye. Oh, and don't forget to keep brainstorming, because obviously we are.